Well, hello there. Walt here from StogieReview.com and with another beta test of the Smoke and Steel podcast. So, I don't even know where to begin, actually. The guys are going to the social club tonight. I can't make it. There was some talk about setting a time for recording next week, and I've been having so much fun with this little setup that I didn't want to wait a week. So I thought, well, maybe I'll come on, talk about some stuff, and kind of make another incremental episode. And because of that, I'm kicking myself for the incremental process that I've used. So the first episode was a beta test, was episode 0, and then the second episode I called it 0.5, episode 1/2, thinking that the next one I recorded would be with the guys, a full-blown episode. But here we are again, solo. I don't even, what do I call this, episode 3/4? So we're making do, but it's fun and it's nostalgic and it's got me excited. So I'm eager to get going with it. I guess the topic that I want to talk about today has very little to do with cigars and everything to do with the fact that I really needed one after the 24 hours that I've had. It has been very rough. So, before we get into the story about what's been going on over the last 24 hours, I'm going to rewind a bit back. It was probably a little more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I don't know, whatever it was. IPCPR, which is the International Premium Cigar and Pipe Retailers Trade Show, which has since been called something else these days and been out of the game for too long. I have no idea what it's called, what the official name is. But years ago, they had a couple of shows in New Orleans. It was one of my favorite trade shows. I really enjoyed New Orleans. It was tons of fun. But there was just one weird thing that happened, like, routinely. You go to New Orleans, and every single day in the summer, there's like this torrential downpour, followed by beautiful sun, oppressive heat, and then rinse and repeat the next day. The last couple of weeks here in Pennsylvania, or the last couple of months here in Pennsylvania, has been very reminiscent of New Orleans a decade plus ago when I was there. It has been monsoon rain, heavy, nasty downpours coming in buckets. It was like a week and a half ago. I'm sitting in my family room and I get an alert on my phone to shelter in place because there's a tornado warning. That hardly ever happens here. But it did. And then we got another tornado warning, same sort of shelter in place alert a few days later. I don't even think it was a whole week later. So it's been nasty here. And of course, if you look out the window behind me, you see the sun shining. So we're back to oppressive heat after torrential downpours. Last night, I was planning on editing the last episode 0.5. And I was getting my stuff together. In my family room, I have a sofa with 2 end tables. I grab my laptop, I put it on the end table. I walk back into the other room, I pick a cigar out of my humidor, I put it on the end table. I walk out into the kitchen, I grab a beer, I go to set it down on the table next to the laptop. I glance out the window, and the sky had opened up in a matter of what seemed like seconds. Buckets of rain are coming down. It is absolutely pouring. Now, because of how wet things have been lately, the sump pump in my basement has been kicking on, and it's a little concerning. So an addition was done on my house years ago, long before I bought it. And there are 2 sections of the house. There's the original house that has a full basement underneath. It was finished at one point in time. It has since become unfinished when the addition was put on to run all the new mechanicals and whatnot. And the addition just has a crawl space under it. So when we get really heavy rain, hot and heavy rain, there's a sump pump under the crawl space that turns on periodically. And that kind of worries me because that's the pump that rarely ever runs. So yesterday I'm sitting there, I'm watching buckets of rain fall, and that pump just keeps turning on for short bursts, turns on, turns off. 3-4 minutes later, turns on, turns off. So anyway, I go down the basement. I'm like just kind of looking around. The basement has flooded at least one time in the past. The last time we got really heavy rain, I had some water in some random spots. Not a lot of water, but things were getting wet that shouldn't have been getting wet. And I'm just kind of like making the rounds, looking, making sure everything's okay. And I hear my daughter upstairs yell, "Where's Daddy? Water's coming in." And I'm thinking, "Oh no, what is wrong now?" So I run upstairs, look at my daughter. "Where's the water coming from? You said there's water coming in." She points at the ceiling. She's like, up there, look." I'm looking and I don't see anything. And I'm still looking. She says, "Right there, look, it's coming in." Still nothing. And then I see the glisten of a droplet of water go past the light. And I can see where it's coming from. Every couple of seconds, there's a single drop of water coming out of the light fixture in the ceiling and dropping down. I have a vaulted ceiling in the family room. It's way up there. I have an attic space that I could get into to see what was going on, but the ladder that I would have needed to get into that is over there, and it wasn't coming out here in that downpour. So put a bucket under the drip, put a towel down to dry off the floor, catch any splatter. Fortunately, it was one of those things where I've seen it before, where the wind is driving just right and pushes water somewhere it doesn't belong, and it's a sporadic thing. It happens, and then you don't ever see it again for weeks or months or years. And I'm kind of hoping that's what I was dealing with, because again, it was like one drop every few seconds, and it didn't last really long. Once the rain started tapering off, the drip kind of went away. It only lasted for a few minutes, but still, nonetheless, I'm like paranoid. I got like a hole in the roof. Like, what's the problem? It's like, we just moved in here a few months ago. It's not the type of problem that I want to be contending with right now. So that whole situation gets squared away. I go back down into the basement. Later, actually, that whole situation gets squared away. And then before we all went to bed, I went down to the basement, did the rounds. Everything looked fine. Went to bed. 3:30 in the morning, my alarm goes off for work. I get up, stumble into the bathroom, get situated for the day, go down to the kitchen, put on a pot of coffee, and I'm headed down to the basement, the semi-finished part of the basement where I have a work laptop set up. And as I'm walking down there with my cup of coffee to sit down for my remote portion of the day, I see water. So I flip on the lights, and it's not a ton of water. It's probably a 1/4 inch of water on a big portion of the floor. But it was kind of a mess. I wound up coming out here, grabbing my shop vac, filled up, I don't know, 5-6 shop vac fulls of water. If I had to guess, maybe about 30 gallons of water in the basement. So not a ton of water, but enough to be problematic. So that took me about 45 minutes to get all semi-dry so that I could put some fans on it and then start working for the day. So sit down, I'm working for the day, and then today I had to commute into the office for part of the day. So I get in the car, I start driving to work. It's nothing out of the ordinary. Everything is normal. I make a turn to head on down this one road that follows the river, and my car started making a whining noise. And I thought, oh, this is not good. I don't like the sound of this. So I'm on this like byway that follows the river. On the side of the river, there's nowhere to turn around, and the roads on the other side are kind of sporadic. So I realized that the only place to turn around is a couple miles down the road. So I'm babying the car. I'm listening to it whine. When the car hits about 40 miles an hour, where it would normally shift, it does this weird thing where it starts to don't want to say surge, but it was almost like if I were to let my foot off the gas and just tap it a couple of times, like off, on, off, on, off, on, where the car doesn't do like a violent bucking, but you can definitely feel the shudder. So when it starts doing that, I ease off the gas, I let the car slow down, ease back on the gas, and I could travel up to about 40 miles an hour. And my plan was to limp it back home. So finally, I come to a road where I can turn around, or not turn around, but sort of loop back, do some backtracking and get back towards home. And I go around this road, and I start to climb a hill, and there's a traffic light at a fairly busy intersection. And wouldn't you know, as soon as I pull up, the light changes red, traffic starts moving, and I've got no choice but to stop. So I stop, I'm sitting there, paranoid that something's going to go wrong. Looking at the light, I'm waiting. The car isn't, it feels like it's idling a little rough. It's like, you just feel a little bit of roughness. And then there's a little pop, tiny little pop. The idle smooths out, smooth as silk. You wouldn't even know the car was running at that point. And then I thought, oh no. The light changes. Take my foot off the brake. I put it on the gas. The engine revs up. The car goes nowhere. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I put it from drive to first, nothing. Shift it in reverse, nothing. Park, nothing. Drive, nothing. Finally, guy behind me is beeping at me. Pulls after I give him the I don't know what the hell's going on around here wave. He pulls around and he says, "Oh, is everything all right?" I'm like, "No, I'm dead in the water. This car's not moving. The engine's revving, but it won't shift into gear." So he's like, "All right, well, let me give you a hand." He spins around, parks, and now he's like waving people off because I've got traffic building up behind me. I'm on a hill. I'm definitely not going forward. The only thing I can do is roll backwards down the hill, get away from the intersection, and fortunately, there's this little side road that has no exit. It leads to like one or two businesses sort of tucked back in off the highway. So he clears some space. I roll backwards into that little road, stop the car. It wouldn't go in the park, so I yank on the parking brake real hard. That keeps me steady. Shake his hand, thank the man for the help, and I called the tow truck. And I sat there waiting for a tow truck for about an hour. Reached out to the mechanic I usually use. Fortunately, really nice guy, really cool guy, and he was able to try to squeeze me in. So I had the car towed to him. Haven't heard back from him yet. He said he probably won't get to it till tomorrow. But yeah, that's how my day has been. The last 24 hours have been kind of rough, and now here I am, car in the shop, stuck at home, which I guess isn't a terrible thing. I mean, I like my garage. The guys are at the social club. Kind of want to go, but I also don't want to ask for a ride because typically with me getting up so early in the morning, I don't want to be there till all hours of the night. Middle of the night. These guys go home at like 9:30, 10 o'clock sometimes. That's crazy when you get up at 3:30. So anyway, I am here, and I am kind of really in, I don't want to say I desperately need a cigar, but I really wanted one to just unwind a little bit. It's been rough, and hopefully it's a simple fix, and there's not a monumental bill coming for a car that's got 86,000 miles on it. That's 10 years old. I really hope. My wife had talked about wanting to get another car at some point, and I really hope that this is not the way we do it. I was hoping to get a couple of more years out of this car before I had to spend money on a new one. This car's been paid off quite a few years, so the idea of having a car payment again is it's gross. Especially nowadays with the interest rates where they are, 6-year loans, 7-year loans on vehicles. That's obscene. All right. Well, this is supposed to be a cigar podcast, not a listen to Walt bitch about his car podcast. So I think this is a good point to segue into some cigar talk of some sort. Now, when we get all the gang together, I thought the best thing to do would be to have everyone talk about their cigar experience, just as kind of like a get to know you thing. I've done this probably multiple times on Cigar Review over the years, but I thought it might be useful to have me do mine separate since I'm recording anyway. Sort of get you caught up on who I am and what I'm doing here. And then I don't know, maybe we isolate some of the guys and do theirs separately so that we don't wind up with this big, long Mondo podcast episode where we talk about ourselves endlessly. Or we do, but however it works out. So I think I'm going to cover mine now so that when we do sit down with the guys, I can sort of focus on them, let them tell their story, ask questions. Should be a lot more fun that way. So anyway, I started smoking cigars thanks to my friend John. Years and years ago, I worked for a furniture builder. It's like a cabinet maker. It was a cabinet making company. At the time, their focus was on entertainment centers, and they built a lot of furniture. And I worked with this guy, John. We wound up getting pretty close. We would hang out for beers, and he started inviting me to some of the family functions that he was having. His family would come over. I would be there with my then girlfriend. And I noticed this odd thing that he did with his father-in-law, where the two of them would sort of go off to the side, away from the families and children. They might throw horseshoes or something, but it always started the same way, where John's father-in-law would pull out a cigar, take a cutter, and literally whack that sucker in half. He would light up half, he would give John the other half. The two of them would, would smoke their half cigars, drink a couple of beers, and have a good time. And eventually, I somehow got brought in on this tradition where suddenly John starts cutting cigars in half and handing me half when we're hanging out somewhere getting a beer. And then one day John got fired, which sucked. But after he got fired, he started doing his own thing. He launched he became a contractor. He was doing like small renovations and stuff, for decks and whatnot around people's homes and residences primarily. And he was putting a transom in one time, which is a window above a door if you're not familiar with them. And I don't know whether he was repairing it or replacing it or putting one in that didn't exist before, but either way, he's putting this transom in for this older woman. And I guess she just randomly asked him, "Hey, do you like cigars?" And he says, "Well, yeah, me and my father-in-law smoke cigars. Me and my buddy smoke cigars." And she says, "Oh, great. My husband passed away a few years ago, and I have his cigar collection left over. I have no idea what to do with it. You are welcome to it. I'll just empty all the humidors, and you can take the cigars." And he says, "Well, yeah, sure, absolutely." So she winds up giving him like a big hefty bag, literally a trash bag full of cigars that were all sorts of stuff. There was no shortage of Cuban cigars in there. There was a variety of readily available like mid-tier stuff. There were a bunch of Punch and Monte Cristos, Cohibas, and then of course, there were the Cuban counterparts, Ramon Ayonas, Monte Cristo number 2s, Punches. No Cohibas that I remember. And here, I guess the guy had amassed a substantial collection since the 90s. And he had passed away, and these cigars just sat for several years while his widow had no idea what to do with them. Until my buddy came along and scooped them up. So he calls me up one night and he says, "Walt, get over here. I've got some stuff to show you." So I hop in the car, I drive over his house. He hands me a beer and he sets this hefty bag down on his deck, on the table on his deck under his gazebo. And he starts showing me all this stuff. And I really didn't know what I was looking at, but he was excited. The band says Habana on it. I guess that's a good one. That was my perspective in the whole thing. So he winds up giving me this Tupperware container full of maybe 50 cigars, and I would periodically smoke them. Now, they had been sitting for a while. They were absolutely dried out. We were kind of formulating how we were going to revive them. And of course, we're doing everything you're not supposed to do because, the internet's around and it's telling us, oh, you should put your cigars in you should put a wet paper towel in Tupperware and the cigar will pull the humidity out of the wet paper towel. Or you should take your humidor in your bathroom when you're getting a shower. This way the steam, gets all in there and revives the cigars slowly. God, I remember one time reading that I was supposed to put my cigars in the refrigerator. It was a slow and painful experience watching cigars burst. So it was just trial and error with a couple of cigars at a time, learning how to bring them back ever so slowly without making them explode from rapid humidification. So anyway, we start smoking cigars together. We have no idea what it is that we're smoking. Here it turned out to be some relatively high dollar stuff. But yeah, we were kind of living our best life, drinking Yingling, smoking Monte Cristo No. 2s out on his patio. Dried out Monte Cristo No. 2s that were coming around. They were coming back a little bit. And then once those all ran out, I started buying from JR. Of course, I'm flipping through the catalog and I see JR alternatives to Cubans. They've got to be as good as the real thing. I don't remember. I think I ordered alternatives to Monte Cristo No. 2s or the Ramon. I ordered something to mimic what I liked in the batch. They were awful, but they were sort of the gateway. They got me into buying other things, smoking some of the more domestically available stuff, and then venturing into some of the less... the less mass market stuff and sort of dipping my toe into the boutique world. And then just sort of went from there. I started hanging out at a local cigar shop. At that point in time, I was going out to Kensington Tobacconist in West Reading, Pennsylvania, which has closed down a long time ago. The owner, Kurt, was a really nice guy. It was really sad to see that shop close up. I missed that shop. It was a good group of guys, and Kurt in particular was a good guy. He was hard to get I don't want to say get along with, but he was very blunt and rough around the edges. And if he didn't like you, you knew it early on and with no prejudice. He was just very upfront about who he liked, who he didn't like. And it took a little time, but once you got to know him, he was just a really good guy, and I just kind of enjoyed being around him. Interrupting my podcast. Damn, telling stories about Kurt. My wife comes in. Anyway, so yeah, Kurt's place closed down. I started going to this place called Cigars, which is a chain here in Pennsylvania. They had a shop on the other side of Reading, closer to where I lived, which was supposed to be a really nice place. And it was when it opened, but it was just in a terrible location. It was on the back side of a mall. You weren't going to find it unless you knew where you were going. And it just was never busy. And it quickly turned into the place where workers in the mall went to smoke their cigarettes indoors, and it just kind of fell apart from there. Then the shop fell into disarray. There was a leak in the roof, and they didn't get it fixed. And ceiling tiles were falling out, and they had this mister humidifier in the humidor, and everything near the mister was all moldy or covered with this, was not plume, this white chalky substance, which I would assume was probably calcium from the water supply that was just being pumped or atomized, it's just pumped into the air. And that place eventually closed. It was open for way, way longer than it should have been. Rumor has it that they had a 10-year lease that was crazy low, and that shop just stayed open for that lease. And then anything that wasn't selling anywhere else, it was like the land of misfit cigars. They shipped it up there, and yeah, that's just kind of where the inventory went to die for cigars from what I understand. So once I sort of lost interest with that place because of the quality of the atmosphere, I started going to this place called Sir Stogie's, which is actually really close to where I live now. At the time, it was probably 20, 25 minutes away. And I got to know the owner, Tim, who was a super nice guy. And that became my new home shop. So Tim's selection was never amazing. You know, he had the staples, the regular stuff, the stuff that you would expect to see in your average humidor. You know, he had his Perdomo fresh rolls. He had his seconds for the guys that would just stop in to buy something that they could smoke while they golfed and drop it on the green and lose it and whatnot, step on it. So, you know, he had his low tier stuff, then he had his middle of the road stuff. Your Oliva G's and Oliva O's and Rocky Patel Sungrowns and Rocky Patel Connecticut's and you know, everything that you would expect, sort of like mass market stuff. He carried. Now, for every, I would say, 20 mass market facings, he might have had like one good one, one impressive one. You know, at one point in time, trying to think of, off the top of my head, trying to think of some of the better cigars. You know, like amongst the stuff, he had the Perdomo 1964s, eventually brought in the Little Hammers. He had Ashton VSGs. He had some of the higher end La Flor Dominicanas. And just, you know, like just good stuff sprinkled in here and there. At one point in time, I believe he brought in Illusions. They were available. So yeah, like, but the beauty of that shop over everything else was atmosphere. Tim did a wonderful job of making sure that everyone was comfortable and having fun. I mean, I can remember leaving work, getting done a little bit early on like a Wednesday, thinking, oh, you know, my wife's still at work, on the way home, or where I'm going to stop in, I'm going to see Tim. It's probably just going to be me and him smoking a cigar together at like 1 o'clock on a Wednesday. And lo and behold, there's a poker table that I think there were 4 chairs around it. It probably would comfortably seat 5 or 6 chairs if you arrange them just right. And there'd be 9 guys sitting around that table. In some sections, sitting too deep. And of course, you walk through the door. Hey, well, come on over. Sit, grab a seat. And there'd be bottles of bourbon on the table. Help yourself. It was just crazy. So much fun. And guys would go there all the time because they didn't want to miss anything. Like, it was such a happening place that no one wanted to miss out on being there in person and having to hear a story secondhand. So it was just it was a really cool place. Tim wound up retiring, moving down south for warmer weather. That shop is not anything like it used to be, and yeah, I haven't been there in a couple of years. But that's kind of my foray into cigars and kind of where I'm at now. These days, I hang out at a local social club, which has 24-hour access. A variety of cigar smokers are members there. And it's a cool place. You know, you spend a couple bucks there at your social dues every time you go in, but they're good all day, and it covers everything. So you go in, pour yourself a beer, it's covered under your $8. You grab a bag of Doritos, it's covered under your $8. You want a bottle of water or two, covered under your $8. Put the TV on, turn up the AC, open a window. Like, what? It's all inclusive, and it's just become a really nice hangout. It's mostly an older crowd, and again, a lot of them are cigar smokers. So that's been my local haunt. They don't sell cigars, so buying cigars typically is Cigar Page these days. They just have fantastic deals, and it's really hard to pass up. A 10 pack of New World Cameroons, which I don't buy all that often. For what works out at $4.50 a stick. That's just you just can't go wrong if you're looking for, like, I don't want to call them mass market stuff, but if you're not seeking out boutiques and looking for hard to find stuff, Cigar Page has got some incredible deals, and that's kind of where I find myself buying cigars these days. So that's pretty much the rundown of where I've been and where I'm at now. I mean, there's a whole other story about how Stogie Review came to be, but I think Jerry and I have covered that on a number of occasions, and it's totally out there if you want to find it. I don't want this thing to get too terribly long. The camera did recycle at one point, so hopefully everything's okay. And I just hit the file limit for individual clips. It looks like I've been gabbing at you for 34 minutes. So yeah, probably resets every 30 minutes. I gotta remember that when I get the guys together. If we start talking too much, I'm gonna have to make some noise and clap and make sure I can sync the audio from the two units, from the audio and the video. But here we are. So this has been episode 3/4 of the Smoke and Steel podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And I think I've said it every single episode that hopefully the next one is with all the guys together. I promise, I do have friends. They exist. It's just a matter of making the schedules mesh and getting everyone out here. Hopefully it's soon. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep recording these weird one-off talkies, and we'll go from there. So, thanks for watching. I will catch you in the next one.